Hello, BookTube. This is Aaron from Aaron Read a Book or Aaron Read a Book. Doing a Friday reads. I've not done one in it feels like forever, and I'm going to try at least briefly mention every book I've read this year so far. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm mostly going to focus on one series which I read all the way through January and February. First things first, though, a couple of new books in. I won't talk much about these, but because I think they're like number 14 and 15 in the series, maybe something like that. But I've got the Patrick O'Brien's from Aubrey and Maturin series, The Nutmeg of Consolation, which is a funny title. I like these edition ones with the square thing here, and then the second one is the True Love, which is the one after. The lovely illustrations on these, but I would say that the Aubrey and Maturin series is probably my favourite series of books ever, apart from maybe Discworld. But yeah, I love that series, and starting to get towards the end now, and it's starting to get a bit sad. So I'm kind of doing one or two a year, but they're the only two books that have come in recently. Let's go through what I've been reading, and the reason I haven't been doing a lot of Friday reads is because I've been reading this series, The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne, which is a big chunky 4-book series. I'll pick a random one. I'll pick Wrath. So this series is a fantasy series. It's John Gwynne's debut series. I thought I'd start at the beginning, especially since these are like surprisingly cheap on Amazon. They're like 20 quid or something for the whole series. Yeah, so these are kind of medieval style, as you can kind of tell from the picture, medieval style fantasy. I would say if you're looking at influences, they're quite easy to find, partially because John Gwynne's two sons have a YouTube channel called The Brothers Gwynne, and they talk about the influences. So, but Robin Hobb and Manda Scott are the big ones that you can really feel in this. And I'm still reading Manda Scott's Boudica series with Sarah at the same time as I was reading these, so I've perhaps noticed that connection more than I normally would have. But the Robin Hobb one is also noticeable because of the great animal characters in this series, which fans of Robin Hobb would be familiar with. And it's even the main animal character in this is a wolven, which is just a wolf, basically a giant wolf. So if you're a fan of Robin Hobb and Night Eyes, you'll know, you'll recognise that. In this series it's Storm, but my favourite animal characters in it are these two little birds. I think one's a raven and one's a crow or something, but they can talk a little bit, and they're used as like battle scouts and things. It's really cool, and they're both quite sarcastic and annoying, which is funny. But the general premise of this series, let's talk about that. So it's your typical kind of chosen one type series, where in this there's the normal world, the banished land, and there's like the other world, which is basically heaven, and there's angels and demons in kind of an eternal struggle. They're called the Kadashim and the Benelim. And basically one angel and one demon has basically been sent to Earth to kind of enact a prophecy. The gods have basically... there's a kind of a good god and a bad god, and the good god has saved the world once, but the bad god is still trying to work to take over the world, basically, and the good god's angels are trying to help, but he's kind of abandoned them and left them left it up to the angels. So the angels send one person to the banished lands, and the demons do as well. And there's a prophecy written by a giant who says that there's going to be one person born who is called the Bright Star, who's a representation of the angels, and there's one called the Dark Sun as well, who's... Is it the Black Sun? I can't remember. I think it's either the Black Sun. I think it might be the Black Sun, and he will be the representation of sort of the demons. And one thing I really like about this series is, at first you aren't sure whose side anyone is on, and there's a lot of ambiguity in general about good and evil and the difference between the Bright Star and the Black Sun and things like that. So the story is told through loads and loads of point of views. So it's an impressive thing to do all these different points of views and have points of views from both sides. So you follow people on both sides, and all of them think they're doing the right thing. So that kind of political ambiguity is done really well in this. I would say one of the weaknesses of the first book, which is malice, is that I was a bit confused by it, by the multiple points of views, and it took me a little while to get used to them. And that was partially because a lot of them are quite young men who are like just setting out into the world. But also there's great female characters in this as well, so I'm not saying it's all men. And another thing I quite appreciated of this is there is some romance in it, but it's nowhere near the main focus. Romance is almost completely left out of this. So also magic is very light in it. So if you like kind of more gritty, realistic fantasy that's less magic-y and less ridiculously powered people, I think the series is really good for that. But yeah, so you follow all these massive amounts of different people, and that's done really well. I think if I was an editor, I would be a lot harsher than most epic fantasy editors. There was particularly one point of view that I wasn't that interested in until book 3, but then it did become like one of the best stories in it. So it's... Maybe I'm not a great judge of character, but the first sort of 2.5 books, I was like, I don't want to go back to this point of view. But it did end up being really entertaining. But yeah, I think probably I would ended up dropping out quite a bit. But again, these are debut series, so I was impressed by how good it was for a debut. Like, I definitely prefer this over like someone like Brandon Sanderson. I wouldn't say it's Robin Hood levels, but it's close. And it's, yeah, I'm very interested to see how much better he gets in future series. Because I think he's got another little series after this that is the same world but like 1,000 years later, and there's a sort of Norse mythology based one as well that everyone says is his best. I can't remember what it's called. but yeah, really enjoyed this in general. I really liked that the world was not that complex. Like I think one of the things that Brandon Sanderson's really, and Robert Jordan before him, really has done to modern fantasy is this obsession with world building, where characters are kind of left behind because there's so much complex world building. In this series, you come to know the world very quickly because there's not a huge amount of weird sort of alien things. There's basically humans, giants, and then there's a few other weird creatures like these worm things and wolven, which are wolves basically. So it's not that different from real life, real medieval times. I loved the giants in this as well. I loved the whole mythology of the giants and that they live long, and again there's a real ambiguity about good and evil amongst the giants. At first you think, oh, these giants are good, these ones are bad, and then you think they're bad, but every tribe is different, and yeah, I just loved the giants, and the magic that the giants use is kind of elemental, kind of almost paganistic type magic, but it's very rarely in the book, and I like that. And I like that the giants are like really long lived and stuff. But yeah, really liked that part of it. I do think there were some weaknesses in the book. I thought people get captured too much. So one of the drama things, the dramatic elements is when one of the main characters gets captured or something by the enemy, and that just happens to you many times. Some characters get captured multiple times, but it does create a lot of drama. I loved the whole kind of, it did feel like a big military war, like a realistic war where there's people moving around the land and strategy and things, and because you're following so many different points of view, that's really well done. One thing that I was thinking about when I was reading this is a thing that is always overlooked in all fantasy, and probably in most fiction as well, is army logistics. Like there's armies in woods here for months on end, and to feed like a couple of thousand people in the woods, it's not easy, and I always think that that's never really dealt with in books, and like just stuff like digging latrines and stuff is always ignored, but it's not glamorous, is it? But yeah, really enjoyed the series. We'll definitely read his other series. Yeah, I was impressed by it a lot, but definite room for improvement, and I think I imagine he will improve as well, so I'm interested to see where he goes. But yeah, definitely my type of fantasy more than... I've never been a big fan of like loads of magic and overly romance and stuff. This felt much more medieval to me, and his influences are obviously historical as well as people like Amanda Scott and Robin Hobb. There's elements of the Roman invasion of Britain in general as a theme in this, and there's Roman tactics in battles and stuff. So very, very interesting. Before I started reading those, I read a book series that's on Kindle Unlimited. It's a very short diaries. I saw this on Sean Bree's books, and it is... He read like the first line of it, and it got me interested. It's the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower, and it's only like 130 pages, and it's just a very quirky little diary about this. I've got a feeling maybe I've spoken about this before, but I'll speak again about it briefly, about this woman moving to London in, I think, Victorian times, and yeah, it is Victorian times, and with her, she basically is due to inherit this house, and her, I'm trying to remember the relation, but it's basically a brother-in-law or a father-in-law or something. I don't think it's that close. I think maybe uncle-in-law or something, who currently lives in the house, and there's like this ongoing battle between them, and it's very sort of almost P.G. Wodehouse type comedy, and it's obviously influenced by a lot of the books that I like. So I enjoyed this a lot, and it's very well written and short. The problem is they're like 100 pages each, and there's 8 of them now, and they're all like too expensive. They're like £8 or something. I'm not going to pay £8 for a 100-page book on Kindle. So when my Kindle Unlimited runs out, I'm not going to have to read them. So I will either wait for those to go on sale or come out as one book to read the rest of the series. But yeah, I enjoyed that. I also have been reading Gilead and Home, which are the 2 Marilynne Robinson books. The first 2 in the, I guess it's called the Gilead series. Gilead won the Pulitzer Prize, and Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading had read it before but hadn't read the rest of the series, so we're reading them as a kind of group read. January we did January did Gilead, February Home, March we're having a break because there's too many events, and then April we're going to do Lila, and May Jack. And I've read Gilead, Home and Lila before, but I've never read Jack, so I look forward to that. And this reread has not changed my mind on them. I love them. I think it's a work of genius. I love it. And it did make me think. I think first time I read them, Gilead was the standout best one for me, and this time around I loved Home. Closer to Gilead to me now, but I still think Gilead is the best. And it's this. I won't go into too much detail about them. It's a story of Gilead is the story of a priest who is dying, and he has had a son very late in life, and the whole book is a letter from him to his son, trying to teach him about his life and his grandfather's life. Well, his father and his father's father, their lives, and it's just a beautiful book about sort of the wonder of the world. And then Home is told from the perspective of his best friend's household, who lives sort of down the road, and his best friend is also a very old priest, and his daughter is staying with him, and we get the daughter's perspective, and he's kind of old and dying as well, but he's going to die a lot quicker than John Ames. John Ames has got a kind of heart problem that's going to kill him. John Ames is the main character of Gilead, but this guy is just dying of old age basically, and his sort of troubled son returns as well, and the whole book is about the relations between this son, the father, and the daughter, and sort of what it means to come back home and things like that. And again, it's just a brilliant book, and I'm looking forward to the next one, which is Lila, which is from the perspective of John Ames's wife, and her backstory. So, but they're beautiful books, and if you haven't read them, you should definitely give them a go. They're very religious, but it's no problem for me, and I'm an atheist, so it's they're beautiful books. March Mystery Madness, I have read the first series in the Maisie Dobbs series. There's lots of reviews on Goodreads for this that are very bad. Like, this seems to be a very Marmite series, and I think partially people have an issue with the character of Maisie Dobbs being a kind of perfect character. But I don't think it's that much different than sort of Sherlock Holmes or even someone like Miss Marple. It's kind of another kind of young Miss Marple kind of character, although much less gossipy. It's probably more like a young Sherlock Holmes. But she's a World War One nurse, and this book is set partially. The setting is after World War One, and she's following this mystery that involves a woman leaving her husband every day, and he doesn't know where she's going. So he hires Maisie Dobbs, and she finds that the wife has been going to this graveyard and going to this grave that has only one name on it, Vincent. Doesn't have a surname. And so she's investigating this mystery, and then also we go back in time to Maisie Dobbs' whole kind of life story, where she's a very poor child. Her mother dies when she's very young, and she's raised by her father, and she's just a very smart child, so she ends up getting an opportunity to work in this big household and this sort of big country house, and then they realise she's really smart and sort of educate her, and she goes to Cambridge and things, and then she becomes a nurse in World War One, and there's a romance with a doctor and all this sort of stuff. But I loved the whole backstory. I thought it was great. The problem is, it's like a big chunk in the middle of the book, so it does take away from the main mystery. But it didn't bother me that much, because I thought the main mystery was kind of interesting as well. It really explores the trauma of World War One, especially things like facial injuries and how that made people feel after. But yeah, I've just Maisie Dobbs is kind of a character that's really good at everything, but she has a mentor, and he kind of helps. He kind of trains her to be like that, and so it didn't bother me very much. I think you have to be somewhat forgiving in mystery books. You have to suspend your belief to some extent. So. Because like Sherlock Holmes is not a realistic character either, but we all love Sherlock Holmes. But yeah, I really enjoyed this as a first in series. It had some weaknesses because of the way it was structured and stuff, but it definitely made me want to read the rest of the series. So very good start. And I'm currently reading The Janus Stone, which is the second book in Ellie Griffiths' Ruth Galloway mysteries, which is a archaeologist from Norwich, and she investigate. They keep finding headless bodies in this archaeological dig, and they think they're from like the 70s or something. So there's still living people around this mystery. But the first book in the series I read in one sitting, in one day, because I was stuck in a caravan with no internet, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm really enjoying this one so far. So yeah, I like this series a lot. It ticks my mystery interest and my archaeology interest, so that's good. Also, this one featured Eltham, which is a place I live near, and there's a scene at a castle there, and I run past that castle all the time. So it felt good seeing my local landmarks in there. But yeah, that's what I've been reading. If you've read John Gwynne's series, I'm especially interested if people have read his other 2 series. But if you've read The Faithful and the Fallen, let me know, and let me know what you thought of it. If you've read Maisie Dobbs, let me know. If you're reading Marilynne Watson, let me know. And if you've read Ellie Griffiths, let me know. And what are you reading for March Mystery Madness? Let me know. Have a good one, BookTube. Bye.